So, Mr. Paul Feig, how are you, man?
I'm good, Alex. How are you?
Do you
Where
know
are you
what?
at?
I'm in London. I'm here in
Okay,
London.
so am I.
Are you really?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm living
Oh,
here now, actually. So there you go.
oh, incredible! Because I knew you were in Belfast for a while, and
Yeah,
then previously LA. So you're living here now.
yeah. We're doing post production on my movie here, which will be going till March because it's a big effects laden film. But also, my wife wants to move. She wants to live here full time. I need to kind of go back and forth. But we love it. We've always loved London, and it's exciting to be here. It's a great place, obviously.
I really feel that London and you go together. I think you have very London sensibilities, and not just because you're such a dapper dresser.
Thank you. No, I feel very at home in London. I mean, my mother's side of the family was British, so it's in my genes, if you will. And yeah, I feel very comfortable here, and yeah, I like the way people face life in London.
And also, it must be quite difficult to, and I mean this from experience, having been to LA numerous times for work, and like yourself, I do enjoy wearing a nice suit. It's so hot there, man. It's like you walk about 10 paces down the street, and you're like, well, that's ruined the outfit because it is now soaking.
Yeah, it definitely can get warm. It's a dry heat, as we say.
Yeah,
Is our mantra there. But I have to say, London. When London gets hot, London is. I always say the only London I don't like is hot London, because it gets
yeah.
very soupy here. And then you're always like, oh, I'll run inside and get some air conditioning. No, it's even hotter inside because there's no. But
Yeah.
that's only for like a week, so you put up with it.
Yeah, it feels like a lot longer than a week because of how much people verbalize their disdain for it. We
Yes.
love a moan. We love it.
You know who doesn't? Who doesn't love a good moan? But what I find is the Brits that I know in LA complain about too much air conditioning. So so it's you can't win
You
whatever side
can't.
of the pond you're on.
You can't win. So yeah, you mentioned it already, but the School for Good and Evil, man, that's is that in terms of scale, from what I've read, it sounds potentially like your biggest movie.
Yeah, I think in scope, I mean, Ghostbusters was big too, but this one's a total world build, which I love. I've always wanted to do, and have kind of never found the project that would allow me to do that. And this one, I love the script. I love the idea of it. I love the story of these two young women. And then on top of it, then I was like, oh gosh, and I can really build this whole world. And that's just been a blast. And I really got to bring a lot of my regular department heads along who just took it and ran with it, and we had a blast. So it's just a big beast to put together now that it's all shot. But I'm having a ton of fun. I've got the greatest cast. I'm telling you, it's just been wonderful.
Yeah, I saw the cast list. It looks like it's going to be special. And I find myself asking this question more and more these days, just because of the scale of movies, I guess, Netflix is making. Obviously, this being a Netflix film, and also the money they're spending on talent behind the camera, like yourself, and indeed big name stars. But the question is, yeah, are you being left alone? Because it seems to me like, compared to, and you have so much experience with this, compared to working with studios,
Mhm.
Netflix tends to stand back a lot more and just go, look, you're the creatives, do your stuff.
They've been wonderful. I mean, they really have been great. I mean, truth be told, I had always kind of said I'm not going to do a movie for streaming because I love the theatrical experience so much, and but this project came along and it was there. But I kind of they've been so wonderful to work with, and they had great thoughts when we were putting it together and developing, and it's a script that was before I came on board had been in development for like 7 years. It was at Universal, then it went over to Netflix, and then I came in and did a lot of development on it too. And they had great notes and great thoughts, and they're very supportive. And I mean, so far they've just been absolutely wonderful. So I have nothing bad to say.
Good. Well, that's great. That's great. Seeing as you're still in post production of the movie,
That's right.
I'll check in with you in a year and,
There you go.
and see if it's still the same. But yeah, it's exciting. I think it. Am I right in thinking it's the first? It's the first because it's a young adult novel. Is how it began life. Is this the first book you've adapted into a film since your very first feature?
Yes. Oh well. Yeah. Yeah. Because that was a movie called I Am David, a very unsuccessful film, box office wise, creatively. You can be the judge. But yeah. So I don't tend to work with other people's material a lot, and yet I guess I kind of do though. Weirdly, because obviously Ghostbusters was something that existed before, and then some of the scripts I've done, like The Heat, that was written by Katie Dippold, and then Last Christmas was written by Emma Thompson, and Simple Favor by Jessica Sharzer, based on a book again. But I'm a writer too, and so it's nice. I always get in there and do a lot of work on stuff also, and if I had just across the board great ideas all the time, I would not do other people's stuff. But I'm really a fan of finding something great and then kind of wanting to protect the good parts of it, and then wanting to like take the parts that don't. You like that sound? Let me tell you about this sound.
Tell me about this sound, because this is good.
Oh man. Let it stop. Maybe it won't stop. Oh my God.
It sounds like a giant shaving.
Okay. I'm in this post-production facility in Soho, and the restaurant right next door and right beneath us is changing ownership. And so they're making it a different restaurant, and they've been working on it, and this all day long. This happens in our editing room. And so we're like watching a scene like, and literally like they might as well be drilling into my head right now. So,
oh my gosh.
Yes. So
how's that working? Are you coping with that? Because I when I've had situations, no, I get you.
We're ready to. It's becoming like Lord of the Flies in here. It's turning us all so agitated that we're starting to fight with each other.
It's the strangest thing. It can turn good people bad. Because I've been on camera shooting, and a plane, like someone has gone, this is the best location, we're going to do it here, and it's a flight path. And you think, I've always considered myself, I'm like, I am a nice person to work with. The fourth take, and you think you've got it, and then the plane is over. I'm just like, no.
Oh, I know, exactly. The most emotional moment too, like and brown. The weird thing, whenever we scout locations, I try to keep my ears on that, but at the same time, things that you kind of in real life go like, oh, I won't hear this. The minute you got a mic hanging over somebody, like everything becomes so loud, and you're just like, oh my God. So, but anyway, so that explains the horrible sound that I just put your audience through. But
I mean, it
wasn't me. It wasn't me.
You have to. I guess you have to. You guess you have to laugh though, because I mean, you are literally editing a movie, and that is going on, like which is going to be all different kinds of emotions, intimate moments, touching moments, and then wow,
punches in the head.
Oh. Hey, let me say this. I think is it. I don't know. Is it too late to say happy Bridesmaids anniversary? I mean, no. I know it happened earlier in the year, but it's still the same year, right?
Yeah, it was only a couple. Oh gosh, a few months. It was May, so oh God, it's been a number of months. But no, we take the whole year to celebrate. But no, it's crazy. It's crazy that it's been 10 years, because it doesn't feel like it's been that long. But I guess it has, because there's a lot of movies in between that.
I felt that as well when it's the 10-year anniversary. I guess I felt a bit like the guy at the end of The Last Crusade who ages really quickly, like he chose poorly, and I was like, I can't believe it's 10 years. But I mean, it's worth referencing what a moment that was for comedy on the big screen. You've got this incredible script from Kristen Wiig and Annie Mumolo. You've got Melissa McCarthy being introduced to audiences for the first time. It was a massive hit to boot. 10 years on, what do you see the legacy of Bridesmaids being?
Well, I mean, just that it began cracking open Hollywood a little bit. It's very hard to crack open Hollywood. But, it just showed them that movies, female-driven comedies had an audience. Because that's really what it is down to in Hollywood. I always say this, like Hollywood's a very altruistic town. Like nobody's there like, let's screw over people. They want to do the right thing, but then there's so much about business that even though their heart wants to do it, they're like, yeah, but those movies don't make money, or anybody starring a movie starring this person won't make money. So they won't do it. So you have to just somebody's got to take a chance and go, look, there's an audience, and that made money. And then they go, so now the fact that, very slowly I think the industry is getting a little bit better women both in front of and behind the camera. But it's a slow road and it takes forever to change. But at least it's moving in the right direction.
But being at the very sort of front of that, in terms of it having not been done before, how much pressure was there on you? I guess not on yourself, but externally from people who are going, we're rolling the dice and you're at the front of this gamble.
Well, there was a lot of pressure on it, which was weird because it wasn't that big of a movie, really. It wasn't like a superhero movie or something. But it was just the timing was kind of, the whole industry kind of went on hold on thinking about and hearing other female, led projects because they're kind of like, we got to see how this movie does. So it was less kind of people saying, you better do well. It was more just kind of like hearing from other, like female writers that I know going like, yeah, they're all saying they're waiting to see how this goes before they look at my female-led project. I'm like, well, shit, that's a lot of pressure to put on one movie. And so then I felt it because also I had 2 movies before that were very unsuccessful. And so, I always referred jokingly on the serious to Bridesmaids during production as my third strike. So it's like, okay, if this doesn't work, but then the pressure of also like, and then if I somehow screw it up, it's going to screw up movies for women from now on. Like the industry's going to go, well, see, it didn't work, which is that. But that's when you go, that's how screwed up Hollywood is. That they would put it all down to one project versus, when The Hangover is coming out, they weren't like, well, if this movie to 3 guys doesn't work, then we can't do movies with guys anymore. So
it's awful, but you're absolutely right. It's
Yeah, it's a bummer, but thank God we did well. So that's all I'll say.
And what was the journey like that opening weekend? Do you? I guess it's seared onto your memory.
Yeah, it was terrifying. I mean, I've told this story before, so stop me if I'm repeating myself. Try to tell it as short as I can. But the run up to it, when they start doing tracking, what they call tracking, where they go out and kind of poll people coming out of theaters. Have you heard of this movie? Do you want to see this movie? We were tracking pretty low, and we had been told by the studio if we didn't make $20 million at least on opening weekend, we would be considered, not a success. And so that was burned into my head, like we got to make $20 million this opening weekend. And then the night before we opened, they did a midnight screening, which, back then they did them for like big movies, but I don't know why they did it for ours, because we were basically like a little wedding movie if you didn't know what it was, and it didn't do well. And so the morning report came in, it was like, it only made this much. So they're really projecting like $13 million opening weekend. So, I'm walking around the house first half of the day, just like, okay, I did it. Well, strike 3, I screwed everything up for everybody. And then it was late afternoon that I started getting calls from like my agents and studio people saying like, well, actually it's looking like it might be 15 million. The matinees did pretty well, and so, okay. And then, but still not 20. So all right, then a few hours later, well, maybe 17. And then it kind of went up to like 18. I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe there's something good here. So I called up Melissa McCarthy, who lives in my neighborhood, and had she and Ben Falcone, her husband, come by. So let's just have dinner on our back porch and kind of see what happens. And we're sitting there, and as we're eating, I'm getting texts like, well, actually 18.5. Well, actually 19. Oh, actually looking like 20. And it's like, oh, that was the moment of like, oh my God. And then it's kept coming in. Like we're actually thinking 21. They're thinking 23. It's looking like 24. And then it was like, get in the car. We're going to the movie theater. And we all went riding down to the ArcLight, the now defunct ArcLight Theater in LA, and the place ran into this theater, and it was completely full and rocking, and so then it was a very nice weekend after that.
I mean, it's funny when you say like on the set of Bridesmaids, I was saying this could be my third strike, and that kind of gallows humor. But were you actually quite concerned with the prospect of, if it didn't do well, that would be 3 strikes, and what that might mean in terms of your ability to tell stories? Oh,
I knew I would be dead in the water. I mean, I was actually kind of already dead in the water because I did that movie I Am David, which just bombed, but it was kind of an indie, glorified indie, so it didn't really ding me. But then I did this movie called Unaccompanied Minors, which was a studio film for Warner Brothers, a Christmas movie, and that really didn't do well. And that put me into movie jail, which is a very real thing, because it basically means, people, they want you to do this movie, and suddenly it doesn't do well. It's like, actually, they don't want you to do it anymore. And I was directing a lot of TV, and I created Freaks and Geeks. So, I was doing well in television, but I just wanted to do movies. That's all I've ever wanted to do is movies. And so had 3 years in movie jail. And fortunately, Judd, actually, when I was in production or post-production on Unaccompanied Minors back in 2016, 16, wait, what am I talking about? 2006. Take us way back. He had said, hey, come to this table read, Kristen Wiig, because she was in Unaccompanied Minors, said, and I love Kristen. He said, oh, come, she's doing this table read of this movie that she wrote with Annie Mumolo. And so I went, and I thought it was really fun, and it was kind of the bones of what the movie turned out to be. But then he kind of wanted me to shepherd it, and I was so busy with this other movie, and I have these offers to do movies after that. So I was like, well, I need to do these, but let me know if it goes. And then my movies fell apart, and then the Bridesmaids, it wasn't even called Bridesmaids back then. It was, I forget what it was called. That just kind of languished for a few years and kind of went away. I mean, I remember calling Judd a couple of years after that going like, what's up with that wedding movie? He's like, I think it's dead. And it's like, oh, that's a bummer, because I just thought it was such a great seeing this table read they did with all these women up there. It wasn't even the women who ended up being in the movie, although Melissa McCarthy was weirdly reading up there, but in a different role. And just thought, oh, this is like, how fun. I've always wanted to make, movies about women, with funny women in it. And so went away. And then it was really, I was in New York shooting a bunch of commercials for Macy's, including one with Donald Trump. Okay. That's, yeah. And I was just really the low point. It was just really like, oh, what is happening? I can directing. Yeah, there's no shame in directing commercials. I do it. But I wanted to do movies. I was like, oh my God, my career's so stalled. And then I got this call from my agents going like, hey, that wedding movie might be alive. But I said, well, Judd didn't call me, so he might not want me to do it. So I said, just submit a list of directors and put my name on it and see what happens. And like 5 minutes later, Judd called me and said like, okay, we're going to do this movie. And, so I got out of movie jail. And once you've gotten out of movie jail once, you will do anything to not go back in it.
Well, I mean, but what you've done to not go back there is carry on making hugely successful movies. So that's good. Did you have had you really addressed it? Did you have a plan? Had you thought, well, look, if this bombs, I have this backup plan. My plan B is I'm going to do this. It's going to be TV. It's going to be it was just going to be, I was just going to keep directing television, for the rest of my career, which is fine. And it's fun. And I do enjoy it. It just wasn't satisfying as a storyteller, I want to have my own things that either I create or to, when you're in television, even though I was lucky because I had my own show, Freaks and Geeks, that I created. So I had a little more cred with the writers, because generally a TV writer a TV director sort of like, here's your script, do it. But I got to have input. But at the same time, you're still in service of the writers and of the showrunner, which is great, because when I had my show, that's what I wanted too. I didn't want people coming in and trying to change everything. But it's sort of, you kind of go, oh, but I want to be the storyteller. With a movie, even if it's a script you didn't write, when it comes to you, it's not like, okay, shoot that script. Like, you as the director in movies are the kind of creative power. And so you have to make the script good. And they want that. They, like, no studio wants you to go like, thanks for the script. It's great. I'm going to shoot it word for word. They want you to get in there and make it even better. So that's what I love, whether I'm writing on it or whether it's something I've written like Spy, or just something that I'm collaborating with. It's just really satisfying. I mean, obviously, Bridesmaids did go on to be a huge success. I think one of the biggest comedies of the 21st century in terms of its box office. I think maybe The Hangover was a little bit bigger. But
they were bigger, yeah, definitely. But we did really well.
Yeah, really well.
Yeah, and internationally too, that was a big thing, because that's the big thing with American comedy, is it usually doesn't tend to travel well. So the fact that we did was really nice.
And I mean, I don't mind telling you, I will. And I don't know whether this is acceptable, because it's taking a little snippet of the story and watching it on YouTube. But I will watch the plane sequence just to cheer myself up. I think it's just such a perfect sequence. Stove. What kind of name is Stove? It's it's ridiculous. It's anarchic. It's so much fun to create a scene like that. What sort of atmosphere do you have to have on the set? Are you trying to build an atmosphere as well as capture a scene as the director? Because I imagine, it feels like sometimes you watch a scene and lightning has struck. And that, to me, has to come from not just the ability of the performers, the greatness of the script, and the person calling the shots behind the camera, but a sort of organic feeling of how everyone's like, I feel in a safe place to just try anything.
Yeah, well, I always say that's one of my biggest jobs as a director is to create a safe environment for people to be able to be creative in. And I was an actor for a long time, which is why I understand that, because I worked with certain directors on different projects. And, you would try something and they would like, oh, what are you doing? Don't deviate from the script. That was stupid. Why'd you do, and you're just like, oh, and you creatively just freeze up, and that's terrible because I've had plenty of times when like somebody does something on my set, and I'm just like, oh God, that was terrible. But I just think it, but in my head, I don't go like, what's wrong with you? I go like, well, cool. Oh, that was great. Now we have that. Well, let's try this. And so many times I'll get back to the editing room and the thing I thought was terrible is actually the funniest thing because it just wasn't something I was expecting or something I had in my head that I wanted. And so over the years, I've just learned like, look, get everything, like get what I want, but then I want them, the performers, to be able to do what they want. That's why I don't do a lot of rehearsals. I just kind of start rolling and they'll do whatever they're going to do. And a lot of times I'm like, okay, that's not at all what I had in mind, but all right. And then I'll just incrementally move them towards what I want. And in doing so, I have all these takes that are various degrees of what they want, what they think it should be, what I think it should be. And it's great because then when I get in the editing room, I've got, 10 takes that are all different. And as you're putting a movie together, you go, you know what, actually, it's better to have that more low-key one or this more amped up one or this one that is completely weird and not what we thought, because when you put a movie together, it's really pieces. You have pieces, you have great performances, but the great movie actors know that you need a few different levels, go like, okay, let's do this one bigger. Let's do this one smaller. Let's do this one more emotional. Let's do this one less, because you just don't know. It's like putting, it's that weird thing when you're making a movie, the dailies have to be good. The studio has to be like, oh my God, we love these dailies. And that's great. So that's your first thing is to make sure you're churning out good stuff. But, it doesn't, when the dailies are all great, it doesn't mean that the movie's going to come together well if you don't edit it right, if you don't get those pieces together. And that's the biggest thing. I'm always saying, like, people are like, oh, this is, it's looking so great. I'm like, yeah, I don't say this to the top people. You're like, let's hope it adds up, because it is, because we strung stuff together and suddenly the thing it was going to be the best thing in the movie. You're like, oh, brother, you like take it out. It just doesn't work now because it just, you're conducting an orchestra and like notes, every note is beautiful, but when you put certain notes next to other notes, suddenly they're not beautiful anymore. And, so that's why it takes, twice as long to at least to edit a movie as it does to shoot it. But that's my favorite part too. I love production because I love working with my actors and doing stuff, but I really love having all the footage and then working with my editor and my post-production team to turn it into something hopefully great.
I've seen the way you work. I've watched you. The other person I saw do a similar thing was Adam McKay, where it's quite wonderful to watch how both you and he will be shouting out things from behind the camera to your actors, going, love that bit. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? Why don't you try this? And you can watch on the set of a movie a scene start here and by the end have transformed into a completely different scene.
Yeah, no, it's really true. I mean, and that's just being open to everything and using the skills and the creativity of the people around you, and which then gets you thinking. So like they do something that they go, oh, actually try this. And you're writing lines in your head and, and it becomes this real free for all that a lot of, I hate sometimes, especially people who don't like my movies, will kind of go, oh, it's all improv and they just make it up. It's like, well, we never do that. What we do is we have a script that we work on endlessly to make sure it's right. But then within it, how you get from point A to point B within a scene, sure, we can detour and try these different jokes or whatever, but it doesn't mean we're just like, okay, do whatever you want. Like you'd be crazy to go and do a movie like that. And I've seen movies like that. And I'm always go like, okay, well, they're just making this up as they go along. So it's got to be like controlled chaos, I call it.
Yeah. Do you have to have a cast that is capable of doing that though? Because I don't imagine everyone is totally comfortable with sort of going, right, you want me to, I've sort of learned this scene, I've worked out in my head, I know how I want to do it. Do they have to be, for example, a comic? Do they have to come from a comic background to be able to do that kind of level of improv?
No, it just depends what kind of an actor they are. And I've worked with both. I mean, I've worked with some who've turned in the greatest performances who said like, please don't throw stuff at me, and it's fine because what I'm able to throw at them then is like performance changes, look, we're not changing the lines, but like try it really upset this time, try it really glib this time, and then you'll get this, great kind of different physicality out of people. So, the only people I couldn't work with have just said they were like machines and just said it exactly the same way each time, which occasionally you get with kid actors, like little kid actors. Mm-hmm. And that's always like, okay, try this. Okay. And then this exact same thing. And you're like, you're kind of like, okay, you rehearse with your parents like over and over again. And that's the worst thing with kids too. Sometimes is, the ones who are naturally gifted just get coached by their parents. And so they come in with these very adult reads on things. And you're like, oh God, you got your parent drilled this thing into your head. So, but that happens very rarely. I mean, the casting process is where you figure all this stuff out, and that's, people know so little about what directors do, because I have so many times people go like, so are you involved in the casting? It's like, yeah, it's kind of like the biggest part of my job, That's like once when I was working on The Office, some woman goes like, oh, you direct The Office. Have you ever met Steve Carell? I think I met him on the set a couple of times. But the casting is where it all happens, and that's why the casting process for me is very involved. And like, try this, try that. I like to throw stuff at people, and if we're doing a straight up comedy, I'll do a lot of improv in the thing just to see where their brain is and how comfortable they are. But there's some actors I've worked with who don't come from a comedy background at all, but are just funny people, and aren't allowed to use that muscle, and they're fun because they so want to do it, and you just have to guard them that they don't go too far or whatever, but every great performer, especially great comic performer, has this kind of limiter that they have naturally, that they will always go a little below because they don't want to go too big. But I always say one of my good skills is I'm able to push you to the edge of your limiter, where I know you won't go past it, but you're going to do something you didn't think you would do that is completely believable, but it's a little more extreme. And that's when then I'm so happy, because then they give you something where as an audience, you're like, wow, I didn't know they could do that. Or that's a new shade of that person. And that's really fun.
Have you ever lost a moment though? Because I mean, one of the joys, but I guess one of the problems as director of working with really funny people, when they come up with something unexpected, whether to them or to the other cast members, like people do crack up. It's inevitable. Are you always getting enough coverage, or have you ever had that moment where it was the perfect moment until they cracked up and you have to say through gritted teeth, yeah, take that one again?
Well, I love it. I always love when they corpse, as they call it here, when people break up. I never understood where that came from. But it makes me very happy because I know I'm going to have fun stuff for the gag reel, the blooper reel. It also just means that they're having fun. They're in the moment. What I find is crews get really upset about it. They're like, and I've had to tell like crews, like especially camera people, like, do not point the camera away, because I was on one of my first movies, like really funny stuff was happening when somebody's breaking up, and the camera would just like pan up to the ceiling, like their way of going like, well, screw this. They're not because I've used moments where people just break because you don't know as an audience, and you go like, oh, what a funny laugh, so I like just keep that fucking camera on them the whole time, because I just think it's fun. And then then you go like, just go again. It's that's the great thing about what I love about film is we're just recording everything, so we have it all. And to me, the greatest moments are the ones nobody expects, who's in front of the camera, that they surprise themselves, or I am able to whisper to somebody, say this to them, and then they have this natural reaction, which you cannot, if you rehearse it, you're never going to get that. It only happens once, and you have it for eternity, and the audience will think they did it on purpose, and that's the beauty of recorded medium, if you will.
I mean, one actor, a comic who you clearly have a great working relationship with is, of course, Melissa McCarthy, who you did Bridesmaids with, and then The Heat was your next one, wasn't it? Was that always the plan as you were closing up Bridesmaids? Did you have her in mind for another project? Was it going to be The Heat? Was that all set in motion already?
Well, I definitely wanted to work with her again. And I actually wrote right after Bridesmaids, I wrote a script for Melissa and John Hamm to do. Uh, and I was really happy with it. And I'd been consulting with Melissa about it and everything. And then it just kind of didn't happen. And so I was really bummed. And she went off to do Identity Thief. And that was kind of my window, and I thought I was going to work with her because then she was going back to this TV show she was on called Mike and Molly. Yeah. So I was just kind of like walking around the house like, oh man, like I didn't get to make the movie I wrote that I wanted to do, and there's not another project, and she's gone anyway. So what am I going to do next? And it actually had committed to doing Bridget Jones' Baby, and was in London that summer, kind of working on it, and then that kind of fell apart. And for me,
so you were going to do Bridget Jones' Baby, and then that didn't. Oh, I didn't know that.
Way back when, like right after Bridesmaids, and it just didn't work out. But so I was just sort of like, okay, well, I'm screwed. And then this script came in called the Untitled Female Buddy Cop Comedy, and I read it, and it was so funny. And part of it was that I was told that Sandra Bullock was interested in playing one of the roles. And so as I was reading it, I was thinking all these people who could be in it. And then like 10 pages in, I was like, wait a minute, this is Melissa. And then when I started reading it with Melissa's voice, it just got even funnier. And by the end of it, I was just on fire of like, I got to do that. I got to do this. And so got in touch with my agents who got in touch with Melissa's people. And basically she was shooting Identity Thief. And they said, we thought it was going to fall apart a million times. We were scouting and everything. It was like Dead Man Walking. I was just like, they're going to pull the plug. I knew they're going to pull the plug. Yeah, I had this whole crew, but we're like, let's just keep going. And then they worked it out. So Melissa was basically going to wrap Identity Thief, come right to our set, and go into production the next day, and would have to just go straight through until she started Mike and Molly. And then the last 2 weeks, we were going to have to fly her on a private jet back and forth so she could film with us, go in, shoot that show, come back. And, but it worked out. And so, it was this kind of miracle that movie came together.
Wow.
And I loved it. I had so much fun. I mean, it was weird. It was a weird follow. It was not a weird follow. It was weird following up Bridesmaids with that one, because I think critics were kind of expecting another Bridesmaids out of me. I don't know. They always kind of think you're going to do the same thing. And so we got kind of not great reviews on The Heat, but it did really, really well.
It did.
I love it. I think it's super funny, and and Sandra and Melissa were so funny together in it, and so I'm very proud of that movie, even though it's probably the one of mine that people talk about the least.
Yeah, it's weird that I agree. I mean, I think it is eclipsed by both Bridesmaids and Spy. I love it. It's possibly one of my favorites because I'm a huge fan of those kind of 80s buddy cop movies, which, it works as a buddy cop movie that is also very funny. And I like the darkness that it includes in it. Like, I don't know what that says about my sensibilities, but it reminds me of the kind of movies that I grew up with in the 80s.
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest inspirations for that movie for me was like Beverly Hills Cop and 48 Hours. Because, you see those movies, you go, oh, these are comedies, and you go, and it'd be like an execution right up front. You're like, holy shit, like this is like high stakes danger. But you go like, that's why it's funny, because these people are really in danger and they're dealing with real situations. So I love that. I mean, there's nothing I love more than making an audience scream and laugh at the same time.
Oh my God. Two scenes that I have to mention. The knife in the leg scene is, it's so good. It's obviously, I mean, it's a spoiler for anyone who's going to see, who hasn't seen it, but I'm going to do it because it's worth it. Where she's like, I'm going to have to put it back in. And that's the first laugh, but it's the fact she does it twice to get it back in.
It doesn't go in the first time. Oh, I know. And that was, for me, kind of the moment where I kind of went like, I want to do scarier comedies or higher stake, because audience, they laugh, they scream with laugh, they scream in horror and in laughter at the same time. And again, it's like those, that's why horror movies are so much fun, because those emotions are so close that no, it was a real game changer for me. Then the tracheotomy scene too.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I love that scene personally. It really makes me laugh because it's so over the top.
It's wonderful. That's the scene that that was the next scene on my little list of scenes here. Yep. I was going to mention, I was building up to it because that is the one that I think I nearly died laughing in the cinema.
I really, because I wanted to do this kind of alternative marketing for the Heat. and convinced the studio that we should do a thing based on something I saw Steve Martin do when he put out the movie The Jerk. When I was a kid, like we went to the theater and like watching all the previews, and then this kind of weird thing that looks unofficial came up and said, for theater owners only, not to be shown to the general public. And then it was Steve Martin sitting behind this desk like, hey guys, here's what we're going to do. We got this stuff. We got stuff. There's stuff in the trailer. It's not even in the movie, like being really honest. And in the audience, and it was so funny. And then at the end, they go like, hey, wait, that's not supposed to be on. And then I get pulled off the screen. I was like, I want to do something like that. So I thought, let's just do that. And we'll put out a scene. And I want to put out the tracheotomy scene. And so we had it all set to go and we tested it. It was so funny, but then the studio got nervous at the last minute. And so they traded it for the scene where she interrogates, Michael hits him in the face with the book and she's going to shoot him in the dick. But I was always like, oh man, but how great, like an audience just sitting there, all of a sudden the tracheotomy scene comes on and they've just been like screaming and running for the exits. But they would have been talking about it. So
they were. It's an extreme scene. It's the one that you go, wow, that must have. I wonder how many conversations were had about getting that scene into the movie.
Yeah, it seems like you go like, if we're gonna do this, let's do this. It's just like the dress scene in Bridesmaids. Like if we're going to do this, like let's have, let's shoot a lot of stuff that's really extreme and then we'll sort out later what's too much. But if you don't have it, you don't have it, and so it's just like, let's just fucking go for it, man. Because I don't like timid comedy, I like either do it or don't do it. It's like, that's why I like R-rated comedy. Like if you're doing a movie about bad people, or bad guys and stuff, and nobody can swear, then you kind of go like, well, okay, those guys aren't really that bad, so it's all about kind of realism because, I do R-rated movies. I don't have any sex scenes and there's no nudity really in any of my movies that I can remember because I don't like that stuff really, as a filmmaker. So it's just also people can swear basically.
And just while we're on the subject of the tracheotomy scene, and fluids in general, one of the moments in Spy that I just remember absolutely dying at is when Melissa McCarthy kills her first henchman and is so repulsed by what she's done and his death, she then vomits on the corpse.
Exactly. Well, I was writing that scene and I remember thinking like, what I liked about that project is basically like, what would happen if I was suddenly made a spy? And, I wouldn't be that, if I was good at it, I would react in very, real ways. And I wrote this scene where she kills a guy. And I remember thinking like, this doesn't feel honest to me. Like, what would you really do? And it's like, yes, you would. Chances are you would throw up if you sent somebody over the side of a building and they landed on a concrete spike or whatever.
And it's what's interesting, a lot like The Heat, which works, as I said, as an action movie, an action buddy cop comedy. I mean, works as a spy movie. Like I remember, because I have this weird thing, which I talk about probably too much, but I get goosebumps at good action. Like it's one of the things that really makes me go, oh, that's amazing. And Spy works in that respect.
Hey, I appreciate that. That's always my goal. My whole career, basically, I'm just trying to work my way through every genre in the that I can, and I love spy. I always wanted to direct a James Bond movie and then realized nobody's going to let me. So I was like, oh, I'll write my own, but I really bristle when people refer to my movies as spoofs, and I just saw recently some articles like Spy, the spoof. And it's like, it's not a spoof. It's, to me, I want to do a real spy movie, but I want it to be funny. So it just means that you have to be true to the genre and make sure that the story and the script works, but then put extreme characters in those situations. And that's where the comedy comes from, that here's this mild-mannered woman who goes into the situation, has to pretend she's tough, and she gets stuck with this woman who's a total asshole, that Rose Byrne played so hilariously.
Yeah.
But that's the funny thing, is like going head to head with extreme personalities and putting real people into extreme situations and seeing how they cope with it. That's funny, but the situation and the danger have to be real, or else it's one of those. I hate those kind of comedies where there's a bad guy but he's funny, because then it's like, well, there's no danger in that guy, if he's bumbling or whatever. It's like, okay, versus okay, even if he's funny, you go, oh, he's funny, and he just killed somebody, like, all right, so he's psychotic, but at least that means something, and then you really are there like, oh gosh, I hope my characters, my heroes can get through this.
I think the one thing that surprised me the most about Spy, and I wonder how you knew it, whether it was, like you say, you attached a lot of importance to the casting process, but how did you know Jason Statham was going to be that funny? Because he is almost the MVP of Spy. He's incredible in that movie.
I mean, look, all you have to do is watch the movie Crank to know that guy has a sense of humor, and so, my wife and I have been just giant Jason Statham fans forever, just because he's so great on screen. Every movie he does, whether they're good or not, I'll watch and just marvel at how good he is. But it really was when I saw Crank, and I'm just like, he has to know this is crazy, and he's so committing to it that is a man who knows what's funny, and so when I wrote that role, I wrote it for Jason, and everybody, like at the studio and beyond, when they read it, they go like, oh, so you're going to cast like Will Ferrell or Ben Stiller in this role? It's like, no, I want Jason Statham in this role. And they would always like crack up, and then they go, that's kind of really funny. Would he do it? That was the only question mark, like, would he do it? But I had a meeting with Jason before I wrote Spy, just because I was such a fan, and like as a director, that's one of the perks you get, is you can like go, hey, I'd like to meet so and so, and sometimes he'll show up. And so he showed up at my offices, and I was so terrified because I was like, I expect Jason Statham's going to come in and be Jason Statham, and I go out in the lobby, and he's there, and he's like reading a magazine, looking all stern, and I was like, oh, hey, Jason, it's Paul Feig. He's like, hey, how's it going? And we had the most fun hour-long meeting, just joking around, and he was hilarious. And at the end, I said, like, Jason, I'm going to write you. I want to write you a role. I don't know what it's going to be. I want you in a comedy. He's like, all right. I think everybody says that to him. And I'd heard later when I called his manager, and they were a little on the fence about doing it. He was like, you know what? Jason said you're one of the first people that actually said they were going to write a role for him who actually did. So he considering it. And then he came on board, and we had so much fun because we had written a bunch of ridiculous stuff for him, but then. When he got there, it was just like, myself and I had like Katie Dippold was around, she was in the movie too, and she was helping me write jokes. And I had some other writers who came in, like Trisha McAlpin and stuff, and they were writing jokes. And so they write these jokes and hand them to me. And I would like that scene in the hotel room, I'm sitting like 6 feet away from Jason, like next to the camera. And he's got all these ridiculous things he's saying anyway. And then they're handing me these things that are so ridiculous. And I'm like, oh, is he gonna like kill me? So every time I like feed a joke, and like, try this one, and I would read it out, and he would burst out laughing, and he'd go, all right, and he'd do it once, and he would it wouldn't come out right, and then he'd do it the second time, and he would nail it, and then we were just like, then we were getting greedy, and we're like, dressed as Barack Obama, just all these ridiculous things, and God bless him, he committed to it. If you ever get a chance, watch on the Blu-ray. There's a bunch of like outtake jokes of Jason's that we did that are so goddamn funny, and we didn't have enough time in the movie to put them all in.
I think I've seen that compilation, and it is incredible. I
still think when he's trying to come up with what his nickname is going to be, it made me laugh so hard that he committed so hard to it.
Yeah, although I still think the icing on the proverbial Statham cake is put me in the face-off machine and give me a new face. That's so
yeah,
good.
He committed hardcore on that one.
But I mean, I think he's got this wicked sense of humor. Because I remember interviewing him for Spy at the Junket here in London, and I just like, he delivers things so dryly that you're like, I don't know if you're joking or not. It's just so scary.
Yeah, well, that was when we did our, what I'll do before I do a movie is like months before, I'll have each person come in and we'll just read their parts, just because I want to hear it. And because I want to know, do I need to rewrite this for them? Should I, let's find out what's funny about them. And so Jason came in and he sat down, he opened it up, he goes like, so now do you want me to be funny? And I said, Jason, I want you to commit to this like this is the most serious movie you've ever done in your life. He's like, oh, yeah. And that's what he did. And so every line, I was just like, I think Melissa was there with me too. And we're just like, oh, like he read every line. And I was like, Jason, go away. We're done. Don't look at the script again until we get to the set. And that's his magic.
Yeah, because in the interview, and admittedly, I I'll say straight out, this was a silly little question, just a little question, a bit fun at the Spy interview. I was like, this is obviously the movie Spy. It's about secret agents. Tell us a secret about yourself that nobody knows. And he just looked at me and he went, "Do you think I'm an idiot? There are cameras here. If I tell you a secret, you're going to record it and it won't be a secret anymore." I was like, I don't know if he's joking. It's brilliant.
It's the perfect answer, the perfect Stathamium answer.
Yeah. So that was the first. I think that was the first time you and I met at the Spy junket, and then we met again for Ghostbusters, which was a very funny interview with the four leads, which you a bit of impromptu direction, sitting behind the camera just to make me extra nervous, which was great. That movie that had a rough ride, didn't it? I remember sort of being a little bit blindsided because, you know, I don't think I'd been quite as aware of the toxic nature that can come with social media and this ugly movement that happened around it. When you look back now, how do you feel about what happened with Ghostbusters?
I think it's ridiculous. I think it was just silly. It was so, you know, I was just trying to make a funny movie, you know, and there was a movie that I remember fondly from my 20s when I saw it, when I was in film school, and I'm like, this is hilarious. And somebody asked me to do a remake, and I was like, well, let's reboot it. I work with really funny women. Let's do it that way. Then we won't get compared to the original male cast. And that was it.
Which makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and like, these are really funny women. Let's just make a funny movie that has action and adventure, and you know, has all kind of the things that the original one did. And that's all we set out to do. And then all this other stuff around it exploded, which I tried to ignore. And then, very stupidly, probably the biggest mistake I've made in my career, I actually, you know, played into it and you know, went after some of the guys who were just being so terrible to my cast. And then, you know, once you do that, you're the bad guy. And then, you know, and then then that happens. There you go. Comedy. There you go.
Oh, lovely.
Oh my. See, it's one of the Ghostbusters haters right now.
I was gonna say, what a time for them to start. Is he defending that movie? Bloody no way.
Oh my God. Wait, it'll end, and sometimes it doesn't end. There we go.
That's good. So, I mean, when you look back, though, I mean, in hindsight, would you have done anything different? Not necessarily, I mean, apart from possibly engaging with these people.
Yeah, that's the only thing I would have changed. I just would have just never acknowledged them. No, I'm happy. I'm happy with the movie. Look, every movie you do, you go like, oh, I wish we'd done this and that. You know, I'm never happy with any of my movies completely. You know, there's always something you want to change. But no, I love that movie. I'm very happy with it. And I love the performances. I love my cast, and everybody was funny. You know, Michael K. Williams was in it, who just passed away. And that was devastating to me because he was the sweetest guy in the world. Just such a lovely guy. But no, I love it. I will never apologize for that movie. I get constantly contacted by parents with daughters and sons who love the movie. I have women who said they went into science because of the movie. So no, you know, it's everybody's way too serious about pop culture. You know, too sensitive about it, I think, and everybody's just got to kind of chill. There's bigger problems in the world right now.
Yeah, agreed. And I know it probably isn't going to happen, but I know that it is something you would have liked to have done because you wanted to explore those characters and their relationship. If in, like, you know, Magic Land, you were able to make a sequel to your Ghostbusters, would you do that?
I'd like to. I mean, I feel like now, 5 years later, maybe it's a little. You know, I always worry about like the sequel that comes years later. You know, because it's, you know, whether the audience is like, wait, what? Why is that back? But in a perfect world, yeah. I mean, I love them. I'm very excited to see, you know, Jason Reitman's new one. I hear it's great, and I can't wait to see it. You know, and he made the choice to build off the first two, which I made the choice not to. You know, and both are valid choices, I like to think. But no, I love Ghostbusters. That's why I took it on in the first place. It's the greatest idea in the world, you know, funny, smart people taking on the paranormal with science. That's fantastic. You know, that's like catnip for anybody who wants to do this kind of comedy. So no, it's still the screensaver on my phone. Wait, look.
See,
Wait, hold on. There's stuff on here I don't want you to see.
Wait,
Yeah, there's my, somebody did some fan art for it. And,
oh, wow. Amazing. That's
there you go.
great. I saw him. How did it feel when Jason Reitman, I think was it Ghostbusters Fan Fest, when he thanked you for kicking down the door on what and who Ghostbusters could be?
That was a very special moment for me, I have to say, because, look, the hate has continued. It never leaves my feed. But so that was just really so sweet of him. I mean, I've known Jason for a while, and he, when I was just in movie jail and directing television, he came out, he directed an episode of The Office, and I was hanging out with him there. And he's always been so supportive of me that I have a real soft spot for Jason. And, when he announced he was going to do his, he called me immediately, like, I hope you're not upset. I was like, Jason, why would I be upset? I think it's great, and I just want more Ghostbusters movies. I think it's a fun world. And I can't wait to see what he did with it. But no, that was a really, really nice moment. And here's the thing I will say is that, that was a fan fest filled with these Ghostbusters fans. They're all super supportive of my movie. It's this kind of second tier of either trolls or people who are just sort of casual Ghostbusters fans, I think, or who had it spurred something else in them. But like the true Ghostbusters fans who dress up, do the cosplay and all that, they're the most wonderful, welcoming people. They're so generous. They do charity events with their Ghostbusters personas, and they've been just nothing but supportive. So, I always hate when the media kind of goes like, oh, the Ghostbusters fans didn't. It's like, nah, let's not paint it with that wide of a brush.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to ask you how it felt seeing people at the Ghostbusters Fan Fest dressed up as your Ghostbusters, which must be fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. One of the most fun things we ever did was when we did the premiere in Hollywood. We had the big premiere in the Chinese theater, and then all these true Ghostbusters fans were coming in for the thing, and I said okay, we're gonna we didn't have enough room in the main one because there's so many people you got to get into a Hollywood premiere for political reasons. I said I want to do the second screening for all of them in the same theater and just have everybody come in, and they did, and they they loved it. The biggest regret of my life is I got stuck at the after party and didn't realize. I wasn't told that the movie had ended, and so I didn't get to go over there at the end and thank them for coming. And to this day, if I could wave a magic wand and change one thing in my life, I would have been there when the lights came up to thank them. But they were just so wonderful, and they all showed up in their costumes with one of the great. I have a picture of it somewhere. They wouldn't let anybody bring their proton packs in, so you just see the courtyard of the Man Chinese where all the famous handprints are. Like a line of dominoes, all these proton packs sitting waiting, and it really I have such a soft spot for the Ghostbusters fandom.
That's hilarious. Like the people on the door going, no. What if you use it in there? No, it's. What do you think this is? This is
really. It's not real. You know that.
I mean, a lot. We've touched on this, but a lot of the movies that you've made, I mean, they're. Spy, it's an action comedy, the Heat action comedy, and the two are married so perfectly, but they do belong on the big screen. And I think what we're seeing these days, this was partly the pandemic, but I actually think it was happening before. Comedy seems to be losing a battle on the big screen and finding itself heading directly to streamers. Do you think that is something that is happening, and how do you feel about that? Because for me, it's slightly worrying.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. People have been getting very squirrely about comedy in the last number of years. I can talk from my experience. When starting with Bridesmaids and the Heat, you put out these trailers, and there'd be a lot of hostility against the trailers. In that, people go well, clearly all the funniest jokes are in the trailer. People, I think, it either felt so burned by comedies that didn't work in theaters, or they feel like they're being manipulated or something. So, we were starting to see a little bit of diminishing returns at the box office for comedy for a little while. But that stuff ebbs and flows. I just think, well, especially with the pandemic, obviously that blew everything out of the water. But, comedies, I want comedies to be in theaters because we engineer these comedies to be seen with an audience of people laughing together. We really like orchestrate them that way. That's what we do all these test screenings. Go like, oh, they got to laugh there. Let's give a little space for that laugh here, and doing comedy for television or for a streamer, which is essentially doing it for television. You structure things differently. You look at them differently because you're not trying to get a group of people to have the same response. You're just trying to entertain, a person or a few people. And so it's just a different skill set, but it allows you to do different kinds of comedy that isn't quite as hard, like big joke, that kind of thing. So I don't worry about it because the big screen is always going to be there, and people should keep doing comedy for the big screen. But I'd rather be in a world where comedy gets made as opposed to it didn't get made because the studio went like, well, nobody's going to come see that, or that's not going to make enough money. Because then we'd lose out on all these really fun voices and new filmmakers, which, streaming has given a chance for new filmmakers who wouldn't normally get that opportunity. And I just want comedy. I want funny stuff out there, good comedy, character-driven comedy that can be as big as it wants to be. But I wanted to get made. I don't, and that's what I was starting to see is like comedies weren't getting made, or like a comedy wouldn't do well. And suddenly the studios like pull back on their comedy schedule, or slate. And then a bunch of projects that probably would have been great didn't get made. So I try not to worry about that because I'm the biggest proponent of movie theaters because I think that group experience is important. But, my new movie is for Netflix. And I love the idea of people being able to enjoy it that way. And our hope is that we kind of have a theatrical release and then also, then a few weeks later come out on Netflix so you can have the big screen experience. We make it as if it's for the big screen. We don't make movies any differently, which is, why I think the whole controversy about, should streamers be up for, Oscars, we don't make the movie. It's not like, well, it's for a streamer, so let's make the movie different. It's like, no, you put as much sweat and blood and heart and into these movies, and you have the same equipment and the same crews, and and you work the same hours. So it's just, a movie's a movie at the end of the day.
That's fascinating. I really hadn't thought of that. The idea of like making comedy different when you are aware that it is going to be straight to someone's living room and they aren't going to be with a group of people. I'd always assumed that it would be the same thing. And I was just finding like with movies that I felt belonged in a cinema, I'm like, laughter is infectious. I've watched movies, never got the best reviews. The Sweetest Thing, Vacation, which I still stand by. And because I was in a room full of people, they are some of the best memories I have of comedies.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that it's still the best way to watch comedy, hands down. The first thing I saw in a theater, I think, was they re-released the Marx Brothers Animal Crackers, and I was in a theater filled with college students they were going crazy, and it's like, oh my, it's like a religious experience. So that is a big thing. But then, yeah, when jokes. I hate the word jokes because it sounds so like, but it like funny moments. With a big audience really have to be foolproof. They have to hit, because if you're in an audience and here comes a joke and you're like, you don't laugh and doesn't get a laugh, and then here comes another one, you go like, I think that was supposed to be funny, then you immediately, in the audience immediately starts to go like, I don't think we trust this movie. We don't trust the people that made this movie, that they know what's funny. And that's when, the anger and the angst starts to come up. And not that we would put in jokes that don't work, but we might be more tempted to go like, I know that's funny. If for some reason it's not landing for a group, but I know it's funny, and this, I don't, we're not expert. We're not foolproof on what we think is funny, but there's just some stuff when you're in comedy, you go like that's funny, whether it's a chuckle or it's kind of sets you up for the next thing. And that's the stuff we would probably be ripping out of a movie. Whereas you go like, okay, I actually think we can leave these things in. You don't want a bunch of them because, again, you'll have the same thing. It doesn't. One person sitting watching a movie where the jokes aren't landing will have the same response and go click. And that's actually the scariest thing about doing a movie for streaming is, at least in a movie theater, it's going to take at least 10 to 20 minutes for somebody to walk out of a movie theater. But on streaming, just like, and 30 seconds in, I don't like this click, and you're just like, oh my God. So that in some ways is actually more stressful, Alex.
And they love their data as well, don't they? Streaming services. So they know at exactly what point someone has turned off your movie and they are aware.
Yes, I know the whole thing now is total minutes viewed, which I find very funny.
Oh my God.
This many people watched your movie for this amount of minutes, collectively. It's like, well, that means one person turned off in 5 minutes. Somebody sat through the whole thing, but I'll take it. Whatever makes anything sound successful, I'll take it.
Hey, I'm going to run in with this very last question because I know you're busy and we're almost out of time because you have to get back to editing the School for Good and Evil before the drilling comes back.
Oh my God, I know exactly. We only had it twice, so I feel very special.
I'm sure you get asked about this sporadically, like a relay race every time you do another interview. But is there any news on Dark Army? Because as a Monster fan, I am very excited. I know you finished the script. There were issues with, the scale of it because, Universal got their fingers burnt a little bit with the Dark Universe. What's the latest Dark Army update? Rewriting right now. I had a little bit of an epiphany on something I wanted to do with my lead character that I was just actually doing sketches of. So excited about that. And who knows? It's the movie business is so interesting right now because there's only so many slots for movies, and so they only make so many. But this is something that Universal been very supportive of, and just really wanted to get the budget down, which they weren't wrong. I mean, there was, I think I wrote it a little too big for the first one. You're hoping that you're going to create a franchise just so these characters can continue. But I'm feeling very good about it. But who knows? I mean, there's a lot of stuff spinning around. But I would love nothing more than to make Dark Army. And I, like a lot of people, would love nothing more for you to make Dark Army.
Thank you, Alex.
Mr. Paul Feig, genuinely, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I really enjoy chatting to you about cinema. You are an oracle of knowledge. Whether you accept that compliment or not, I always
I'll take it. I think some people would disagree with you, but I appreciate it.
Have a great day and good luck with putting your latest film together. I can't wait to see it.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Have a great day, mate.
You too. Cheers.
Hello, Alex here. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to get in touch with us at all, for any reason, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at JTFpod. And don't forget to subscribe to the full audio podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your pods.